First season of the Star Wars Andor series has given us some interesting new characters, with a fresh story, amazing directing and acting, and a more adult theme than anything we've seen in Star Wars. The new characters enrich the stories as told in a galaxy far, far away. But some of these new characters don't appear in any other Star Wars project. Okay, most of them. Okay, none of the new characters appear in any other Star Wars project nor movie. So it leaves us to wonder, what is their fate? Well, I'm not going to speculate on that. Sorry. But it's a question I'd like you to theorize in the comments. Maybe they end up being killed off, or maybe they don't. The Star Wars galaxy is huge. Even with characters like Captain Rex and Hera Syndulla, we don't see them beyond their arcs in their series. But we learn that they were actually in battles seen in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So there's hope for these interesting and deep new characters in Andor we've just been introduced to. One of these new characters is Luthen Rael, the coordinator of rebel activity through individual rebel cells. But what else have we learned about this mysterious newcomer in the Andor show? I've made other videos about how Luthen Rael may be a Sith or even a former Jedi, but those are highly speculative, and the chances are we may never know any of that for sure. So let's take what we do know about Luthen Rael and break it down in this Andor series character analysis of one of the most mysterious characters we have seen in any Star Wars series, Luthen Rael. If you love Star Wars as much as I do, or you're just a casual fan wanting to talk about the greatest franchise ever created, then you've come to the right place, because Star Wars is all I talk about, and I upload new content, whenever I can. So if you have an interest or love for Star Wars, go on and hit that subscribe button and join this growing channel for deeper discussions, theories, and Star Wars lore. Each one of you is appreciated much more than you know. I have done other character studies on those in the Cassian Andor series, including Cassian Andor himself, Cyril Karn, and Mon Mothma. If you haven't seen those videos, I'll link them in the description below. Like I said before, I've made other videos about Luthen Rael being a Sith or a Jedi, but none of that matters for this topic. It probably doesn't matter for the overall narrative of the Andor series, and especially for the character of Luthen Rael. No, this is an analysis of his character and the things we know about him for certain. In a nutshell, is Luthen Rael a Sith or maybe a Jedi? Who cares? It doesn't matter right now. Not until it's spelled out for us, and it may never be. The mystery of Luthen Rael is one of the appealing parts of his character. That isn't to say you can't theorize as to who he is or whom he was. It just means that you should keep those theories loosely. In the first scene where Luthen Rael is first mentioned, he's known only as the Contact. Cassian Andor has generously taken some important Imperial tech from one of their facilities, and he needs to sell it in order to pay off debts and feed himself and his mother. From the moment we see Luthen Rael arrive on Ferrix, there's an air of mystery surrounding him. But there's one other thing. Focus. He needs this transaction with Cassian Andor to go smoothly, otherwise he risks failure on another of his endeavors. Cassian Andor is the key to making it successful, and Luthen Rael is putting his best foot forward. So his focus is there. We can see it on his face. This is the case with so many characters in the Andor series, understanding their thoughts, emotions, and feelings through the acting from the actors. When Luthen meets Cassian, he tells Cassian that he can pay him the money for the stolen tech, and they should go their separate ways after that, or he can join him for a mission and make 200,000 credits, something Cassian can definitely use. But it isn't until later episodes that we can feel there would be no going separate ways after this transaction, that Cassian Andor probably wouldn't have walked out of the meeting alive. Why? Because Cassian had seen his face, and that's something Luthen couldn't have. Not only is he mysterious, but he is also one to not give up his identity so easily. When Cassian Andor asks Luthen who he is, he never really gives him an answer, and it's this way throughout the Andor series. Cassian agrees to the new terms under duress. The Imperial affiliate corporate security known as Primor has caught up to Cassian for the murder of 2 of their officers on Morlana 1, and Luthen was ready to fight his way out alongside Cassian. Cassian provides them with an escape route after Luthen shows his resourcefulness in the form of booby traps set up throughout the perimeter and inside their meeting spot. But Cassian needs to get off-world fast, and Luthen has the means. Luthen kept the details of the mission as vague as possible until the pair reached Aldhani. Then he laid it all out. A heist. To steal a large sum of money from an Imperial garrison stationed on the planet, and there would only be a handful of co-conspirators to help him. Now, within Luthen's web, Cassian reluctantly agrees. Before departing, he gives Cassian a kyber crystal from the Rakatan Empire and tells him not to accept less than 50,000 credits for it, that it's worth much more to him, but he wants it back. Confused yet? It's a down payment. If Cassian doesn't go through with the heist, he can sell the crystal, but he had better run and hide if he does. At least that's the impression we get. Luthen leaves Cassian with the heist team and departs for Coruscant. While underway, Luthen changes his appearance from one of an average traveler to one donning the trappings of high society, a wig, fancy robes, and expensive jewelry. Upon returning to Coruscant, we see why he does this. Luthen Rael has a cover in the form of a shop of expensive and rare antiquities. He's a man with a double life. Not uncommon for people in his situation, but this double life requires him to hide in plain sight. An interesting note to this is that he doesn't change his name. He is known as Luthen Rael on Coruscant, as well as in the side dealings he has with rebel cells. Throughout the first season of the Andor series, we see Luthen Rael interacting with different individual rebel leaders. Mon Mothma, who we all know at this point is not so much getting her hands dirty in missions, but rather providing funding for rebel activity. Saw Gerrera, who is growing increasingly paranoid. Vel Sartha, leading a small band of rebels, including the heist on Aldhani. Then there's Lonnie Jung, the Imperial Security Bureau agent turned rebel informant, with the latter allowing Luthen to stay one step ahead of the Empire. Luthen Rael is a very complicated character. His shop contains many items that make us question who or what is this guy? And that question was asked several times throughout the series, but it was never really answered. Not directly anyway. The answers given were vague, with the vaguest answer being when Cassian Andor asked Vel Sartha who Luthen is. Her answer? He's something we will never discuss. But that's part of the allure of Luthen Rael, the mystery. Stellan Skarsgård does an amazing job portraying Luthen, as can be said for almost every actor in the Andor series. But what does all this say about the character of Luthen Rael? Surely the mystery of him isn't the only interesting part. There is so much more to him, though. When we see him for the first time, we see the confident man willing to give his life to the cause. Cassian Andor even holds a blaster to him, and Luthen doesn't even flinch. When Luthen meets with Saw Gerrera, he displays this confidence again, and one would definitely need to be confident in the presence of Saw Gerrera because he will find your weakness, exploit it, and throw you away. Another instance is when he meets with Lonnie Jung in the bowels of the Coruscant lower levels. He isn't only confident, but he is also overbearing. But the confidence of Luthen Rael only extends to those he is trying to manipulate. When he is awaiting news of the outcome for the Aldhani rebels, there are cracks in his confidence. He worries. Instead of sitting back and waiting for the news, he's constantly monitoring the comms channel, worrying. He is then put back on track by his assistant Clea. His confidence falters further when he questions his decision to hire Cassian Andor for the conspiracy. Now, that doesn't seem like a lack of confidence, but rather a lack of trust in Cassian. However, he's questioning his decision of recruiting him. He's questioning his own judgment. This shows a lack of faith in his own decisions. The theme of sacrifice is prevalent throughout the Cassian Andor series. All major characters in the show sacrifice something for their cause, whether they are a rebel or an Imperial, and we learn that Luthen has sacrificed so much. When he's speaking with Lonnie Jung of his sacrifices for the cause, he tells Lonnie that he has sacrificed everything, but in this amazing monologue, he is still vague, only giving us clues that 15 years prior, he was thrown down a path that has left his mind a sunless space. that he has to use weapons of his enemies against them. But even as vague as his monologue is, there is something else that we do see Luthen has sacrificed. And there is more than one. The first, as I mentioned before, is confidence. His questioning his own judgments in people and showing that he can't rest until there's an outcome that is favorable. He's shown a lack of confidence in his own decisions, and he has no confidence in others. We often see him leave his storefront facade in order to ensure personally that his dealings are going as planned. Sure, it's probably better that he deals with Saw Gerrera in person instead of using a liaison or a confidant. But even using someone else to communicate with Saw Gerrera would eventually work out once they gain Saw's trust. So, in taking on certain matters himself, he has sacrificed his own security, risking his identity every time he leaves Coruscant, thus risking the entire rebellion. He isn't content with being a puppet master, pulling the strings behind the scenes, and this sacrifices his identity. Wigs and finer possessions can only cover so much when he's traipsing around the galaxy using the same name as he does on Coruscant. Luckily, the people he interacts with are those he trusts entirely, other than Cassian Andor. But that changes when he sees Cassian is a man of his word. Luthen Rael is a man who has been through a lot. By his monologue, we can see he has lost a lot. Not just physically, but his losses have changed him into something altogether different. His mental state is fragile, and his emotions often get the best of him in private. And we can imagine he wasn't this way 15 years prior to the Cassian Andor series. I would not be upset if we got a Luthen Rael spinoff to show us how he got to the point of having to sacrifice so much, with the only return in his investment being uncertainty. Uncertainty in his success of his revolution, both with the rebellion and revolution he has to battle internally. Before I end this, I'd just like to make a side note. I'm sure I'll get a bunch of comments stating that Luthen Rael's monologue wasn't actually vague, that it meant this or that, but each comment will have a different conclusion as to what Luthen Rael was talking about, and that makes his monologue vague. We can speculate all day long, and I do have my own theories on his monologue, but that's all it is, theories and speculation, until we're given a solid answer. If we're given a solid answer at all, that is. Be that as it may, I'd still love to hear your thoughts on it, and I do read every comment. I also reply to as many as I can, so keep them coming. Your voice is heard. The next character analysis I'll be doing is of Dedra Meero. Following her will be the Aldhani heist rebel known as Nemik, the young lad with the manifesto. So if you aren't subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button on your way out to stay up to date on all the characters I do. Once I finish with the Andor series, I'll go back and do characters from other Star Wars movies and series. This is Gerald, a Star Wars fanatic, signing off, wishing you all great health, happiness, and peace. Be good to each other. Thank you all for watching, and remember, this is the way. And positivity in the Star Wars community is the only way.